What is up everyone and welcome back to another video. So as you know, chapter 4 of Fortnite is finally out and it brings an absolute ton of changes like a whole new map, new items and weapons, various new game features and so much more. There's definitely a lot to navigate in this chapter and that's why in today's video I'll be doing my updated guide on how to improve super fast in Fortnite chapter 4. Before we hop into the video though, be sure to drop a like on it if you find it helpful and consider subscribing if you're new to the channel since I post tons of tips and tricks content just like this. And lastly, consider using code TECHO in the item shop, especially if you're buying the new battle pass or any new skins. It's completely free for you and it seriously helps me out a bunch. Thank you so much to everyone who's using it. But with that said and without further ado, let's get into today's video. So starting off this video, you know we got to start off by discussing one of the most important changes in chapter 4, which is the loot pool. In chapter 4, the loot pool has basically gotten a full overhaul with the red eye AR as well as the OG Scar and all rarities. You've also got new shotguns including the Maven auto shotgun, which is faster shooting, and the Thunder shotgun, which is basically the chapter 4 equivalent of the pump. There are plenty of other new guns as well, and some items have actually remained from chapter 3. The strategy to get good with the loot pool is pretty much the same as previous seasons, and that's simply to grind out matches as well as creative while using a variety of all the items in the game. Odds are you will have some favorite weapons and items after a couple of games. I already know I do, but you really never know what's going to get changed or vaulted in the future. Obviously it's a brand new chapter, so it's really worth being experienced with everything. As well as that, I guess it's not technically within the loot pool, but I also recommend playing around with a variety of the reality augments. If you don't know what those are, they're basically perks you can get in game, and I recommend that you just see which ones fit your playstyle best. I really like these augments so far. There are tons of cool options and I'm excited to see how they play into the meta and maybe even competitive if they remain in it. Similar to the loot pool, mastering the map is also a crucial piece of improving in chapter 4. In chapter 4 season 1, people really don't know the map because obviously it's brand new, and a good way to set yourself ahead is to use a strategy similar to the loot pool where you basically just land all over the map and try to explore everything a bit before you start selecting which drop spots are your favorite. One thing I've noticed with the current map is there's definitely a lack of POIs. At the moment there's only 9 of them. Keep in mind I'm literally making this video on day 1 of the chapter, so I'm assuming more locations are going to be added over time, but right now there are only 9, which means I'd strongly recommend you take this time to also explore some of the outskirts areas of the map as well. If the map remains light on the number of POIs, those quiet unnamed locations are definitely going to be meta when it comes to getting placement points and winning games, especially because that's a focus of a lot of the cash cups this season. One tool I really like in terms of learning the map is the website fortnite.gg, where you can select all sorts of information about the map. For example, you can find all the chest locations, any other spawnable items, and it really just gives you a good in-depth look at every spot on the map. If you're watching this right now at the start of the chapter, it might not be updated yet, but if you're watching this after a few days, it should be all set. So I definitely recommend checking that out if you haven't used it before. Overall, especially in the first few weeks of chapter 4, try to vary up your drop spots and focus on learning all the ins and outs of the map and exploring everything. Moving on from that and on to our next tip, and this one is to watch pros play. When it comes to any new meta, as you probably know, pros are pretty much the first ones to catch on to all the best strategies, and spending some time watching a pros stream or other content is definitely a good way to find some new strategies and whatnot. Of course, it's one thing to sit back and watch something for fun, and it's another thing to watch something with the goal of learning and improving your own gameplay as a result, and the improvement option is probably the one to go for. A common mistake people make when they're VOD reviewing a pro is that they end up just watching and not thinking. And of course, this is totally fine if you're just watching it for fun. If your real goal is to learn the meta and find new strategies, the best option is to focus and really pay attention to the details of their gameplay. This tip also applies to YouTube videos. As you know, I make tips and tricks videos, and I should be posting a ton of them this chapter, so I'll be giving all sorts of strategies and advice throughout the entire chapter to help you improve as well. So whether it's pro gameplay, educational tips and tricks videos, or any other form of content, watching videos in order to improve is definitely a great way to approach it, especially in a newer meta where there's a lot to learn. As with any season, the real game is a super important way to improve, but we still can't neglect the value of creative as well, which is why this next tip is to use optimal creative practice. Even in the new chapter, your mechanical skills can always use work, and it's definitely worth spending some time doing creative. The big thing with creative is that you really want to make the best of your time in it, and that's why at this point in time I recommend creative primarily for combat practice with the current loot pool. That would be things like zone wars, build fights, realistics, etc., as well as weakness practice. Weakness practice is very simple. It really just means finding your biggest weaknesses in game and then spending time in creative targeting those exact issues. The way I recommend approaching it is to play out some games and head into replays to watch wherever you ended up dying. Figure out what issue caused you to lose the fight, and if it's something you can practice in creative, then spend some time each day working on it. For example, if you constantly whiff your shotgun shot, spend some time in aim duels, or if you can't piece control properly, maybe do a piece control map. It's a pretty simple concept, but you'd really be surprised by how well this can work when you actually improve on the main things that hold you back in the game. So overall guys, even with all the new stuff in chapter 4, there still is a place for creative in your practice routine, and if you approach it in the way I've outlined, you should see some serious carryover to your real gameplay from your creative practice. Moving on to our next tip though, and this one is one you were probably expecting, which is simply to grind arena. Arena is undoubtedly a fantastic way way to improve at the game. The players tend to try harder, it's optimized for better competition, which makes it more skillful, and it has the ranked system, which can kind of help you gauge where your skill level is at and sort of track your improvement over time. All in all, even though public matches are okay for improvement, the competition has definitely stepped up a notch in Arena. One of the biggest patterns I've noticed is that the players I know who spend the most time in Arena tend to make the most improvement. Obviously, that doesn't really apply to pro players, but it applies to pretty much everyone below that. I think it's mainly due to the combination of factors in a real match mixed with the skill level of the players that really just forces you to either improve or fall behind. I recommend that if your primary goal is improvement, you spend a lot of time in Arena mixed between the 3 game modes, solos, duos, and trios, and just play a moderate playstyle. Don't W key so hard that you die off spawn every game, but also don't camp for placement because that won't help you improve at fighting. Play a decent middle ground playstyle, put a good amount of time into it, and you should see some significant improvement. Also guys, as a side note, I do plan on releasing lots of Arena videos this season, so be sure to stay tuned for those. I'll be discussing all sorts of ways to improve at Arena and how to maximize your point gain if you do want to grind leaderboards or just get a lot of points. Moving on to our final tip for this video though, and this is a classic Techo Fortnite tip if you've been watching my channel for a while, which is VOD reviewing. I did touch on VOD reviewing earlier when I was talking about creative practice, but it definitely deserves its own section of the video as well. If you don't know, VOD reviewing basically means watching back your own gameplay to find out what you did right and wrong. You can directly record your gameplay, watch it on replay mode, or even just clip whenever you have something happen that you want to look back on. VOD reviewing your own gameplay is absolutely crucial because it really allows you to see a perspective that you don't have access to while playing normally. Sometimes you'll be playing, you'll make a blatant mistake and lose, and other times you're going to feel like you did everything right and you still somehow ended up losing. But the fact of the matter is that if you lost the game, you made some sort of mistake, and VOD reviewing is a fantastic way to find those mistakes and then devise a strategy to actually improve on them so they don't happen again. The gradual process of VOD reviewing, fixing the mistake, VOD reviewing again, fixing more mistakes, on and on and on, is basically what leads to massive improvement over time, regardless of what your strengths and weaknesses are in game. So if you're looking to improve at the game and you're not VOD reviewing your gameplay already, that's definitely something you should start to utilize, and if you do it correctly, you should see some major improvements. But with all that said guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on how to improve fast in Fortnite Chapter 4. Overall, by following all the tips we've discussed in this video, you should find yourself improving at Fortnite much faster, whether your goal is to grind arena points, place higher in tournaments, or even just do better in regular games. As I already mentioned, if you found this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it, and consider subscribing as well if you're new to the channel and you want to see more content just like this in the future. I plan on releasing a bunch of tips and tricks videos for the new chapter, so feel free to hit that notification bell as well, that way you won't miss out. And of course, if you want to show some extra support, it would really mean a lot if you could use code TECHO in the item shop. It's 100% free for you and it really helps me out more than you think it does. And finally guys, let me know down in the comments what you think of Chapter 4 so far. Personally, it's very early in the chapter when I'm making this video, but I'm personally enjoying it quite a bit, and I'm really just curious to see what you all think about it. But with that said, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.